So we're here with Colleen Egan today. Thanks for joining us, Colleen.
You're very welcome.
Colleen is a real superstar entrepreneur. And before we start asking her questions, I was going to tell you a little bit about Colleen's background. So she started her background and her career as an oncology nurse, and then went on to become a healthcare administrator, and then the founder of a healthcare startup. She also is an advisor to Kinsey Capital, which is a women-founded private equity company. And that's not all. Dearest to us here at DePaul, Colleen is a founding member now of our Women's Entrepreneurship Institute here at DePaul University. So with that, thank you for joining us, Colleen. How did you end up being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think most people, they ask that question, are you born an entrepreneur or are you made an entrepreneur? And I think it's a little bit of both, but the way I became an entrepreneur is I was just a naturally curious person, and I was always trying to solve things. It's like when I started in healthcare, excuse me, I was young and, I thought I could run the hospital better. I didn't know any better, but, I just saw the flaws in the healthcare system, how they weren't adopting technology, the redundancies of a lot of things. And I thought, I can do that better. So I actually did. I left nursing. I started my own home healthcare company called New Mother's Care. Did that for a couple years. And then I took some time off, and what's not on my resume is my husband at the time had a very large construction company, and I was always interested in construction. So I could hear him yelling at me as I was on a roof, like learning how to use a nail gun, learning how to, use a miter saw, learning how to do electricity and plumbing and things like that. But I just had to learn, and I advise everybody in the audience constantly be a continual learner. And even though you think some of the things you're learning now won't help you later in life, it all does. So for me, the entrepreneurial, journey just kept continuing. I went back to healthcare. I was leading some long-term care facilities. And things I hadn't done before. I was leading the sales teams, the marketing teams. I was the liaison to the healthcare community in Chicago. And I'm really good at speaking to people and getting them to understand what the problem is, understand what I think the solution is, and getting them to buy in and follow me and do things. So I think that's really important for an entrepreneur too. If you're like the CEO or the leader, you need to be the biggest cheerleader for your company and believe in your mission and get everybody to believe in it to work successfully for you to make it a successful company. So after I left healthcare again for the second time, I went into technology in a big way. A friend of mine was the CTO of Quantum Leap, a division of Leap. And I had no idea what I was going to do, but he's like, Colleen, I need someone to come in here and run the shit out of things. And I was like, I can do that. I know how to run things really well. So I learned a lot. I was there for a year, and we were building large-scale GDS systems for travel, like for American Airlines, Cathay Pacific, United, things like that. When we were moving from 1999 to 2000, everyone thought the world was going to end, that our computer systems just wouldn't be able to make that simple jump. And, we did all these preparations. Leap was sold to another company. They merged because of K2000. And we just became a totally different company. So 7 of us left, and we started our own company, 212. And there again, we were building large-scale travel sites, working for other companies in the Fortune 500. So we were having fun doing mostly travel and entertainment. But then again, another major, catastrophe, a national catastrophe that happened with 9/11. And since we were heavy in the travel and entertainment side, we lost probably 50% of our business. People just weren't spending the money. It's pretty much what we're doing now. But, the 7 of us as entrepreneurs, we took no salary for a year. We kept most of our employees on. Some we had to turn to part-time. and we let our contractors, most of those, go. But I think we did a really great thing. And yeah, the entrepreneurial, spirit in us was, how do we stay alive? How do we keep our company afloat? And where do we have to pivot to make the hard decisions to keep, our employees employed and doing work? The power of yes is really important to entrepreneurs. You have to be inspired risk takers. So with the information I had, I left my own company and I moved to LA, and we produced 3 seasons of the Zulu Patrol for PBS, which won some Emmy Awards. It's still on television. We created a national curriculum for children 3 to 8, which there was no STEM education for children 3 to 8, and we were falling behind in the United States. So there was a problem. I saw the solution. I said yes to the opportunity, and it was great. We created a virtual world with IBM. We did multiple movies for space and science, like astronomy centers across the world, and we created a traveling space and science show. The only reason I left is my dad had died. Sometimes life gets in the way of being an entrepreneur, and my sister's in Ireland, my brother was in Japan, so I came home. I took a year off, and I went back to consulting. My first love is always the entrepreneurial and startups, so I started consulting with startups that couldn't afford people like me, but could bring me on as a consultant to help them. So companies you might know in Chicago, like Think Circa, the educational company, and Built in Chicago, which is now in 6 cities. Catalytic, which is AI. So I work in a bunch of different industries that I'm really interested in, but that I'm passionate about. I mean, the mission has to be right for me. And so then, yeah, I did that for a while, but then I miss people. Like now, I miss people. It's so good to, be here with Maija and all of you. So I went back consulting. A company had called. They were interested in bringing me on, and they knew my personality, so they fashioned a role for me, which is important for all of you to know too. As you're out there, there might not be a role, but as you become increasingly aware of where you can succeed and what you're good at, you may be able to talk a company into creating a role for you. So be confident in that. Clarity created a role for me as a quasi-director, which was one step under a partner there, but they couldn't bring me as a partner. So I did operations, consulting, I led the people function. I got to work with Kinsey Capital because we were an investor in them. And I loved what Kinsey was doing, so I invested in them personally. So it was a great position for me. I just got bored, and I told my bosses I was bored. I needed more to do, and they understood that. So I parted ways, and I went back to consulting where I could mix it up a little bit. We're still really good friends. I send them work. They send me work. So another great thing for all of you to learn is never burn bridges, and stay connected with your network, because you never know where that may lead you in your next career choice. When DePaul called, I really had no affiliation with DePaul. I had been to a lot of events and, followed DePaul, but they were looking for 40 women founders to found the Women in Entrepreneurship Institute. And after a couple interviews, they said yes, I said yes, and it's probably been one of the best experiences of my life. And I know someone asked a question that Maija will probably get to later. But, it was something around, you've done so much, what do you do next? Where do you go next? A lot of it for me is legacy. Taking the position at DePaul is a legacy position. It's taking all my experience and wanting to give back, and it's wanting to help other women succeed. Those are the kind of women that are out there, that are leading by example. And so, yeah, I do a lot of mentoring to give back. But the entrepreneurial journey for me, the origination of this question, has really been this organic discovery of myself, discovery of the world. It's been a fabulous journey, and I've literally just said yes to opportunities, which has got me to where I am.
That's great. That's great. And we're really lucky to have you and all the other 39 women with us at the WEI. So with all that success and with all of that experience, you already touched upon some of these, I think you could call them general philosophies that you have kept with you throughout these years. But so there was a question from Christina in our class, and she asked, having served in many influential positions for a diverse group of companies, are there any general lessons or philosophies that you have carried with you throughout each experience? So maybe like if there's a couple of things that you think are most important to you personally, what would those be?
The thing that has guided me most throughout my entrepreneurial, journey has been the power of saying yes. But also the power of saying no. I think you have to follow your gut, and you'll know when something feels right, and you'll know when it doesn't. And a wise woman once said to me that no is a complete sentence. You can say no. You don't have to give an explanation. You can just say no.
That's great. That's great advice. So then Nora asked a question, and this is a very timely question, obviously, today. Throughout your experiences, is there a certain way that you deal with uncertainty and even defeat? And you just talked about the power of saying yes and positivity and all of that. Is that enough, or is there something more to it?
Yeah, my wife calls it my ego, and I do have a little, for me, it's just self-confidence. I've always been really self-confident in myself. I grew up, and probably like many of you, my parents were immigrants, didn't have a lot of higher education. My dad was my biggest supporter, my mom, my biggest detractor, My dad said I could do anything. My mom was not an inspired risk taker. She was always worried and anxious. And so I learned from both. And so when it comes to uncertainty, I understand both sides of the equation. But for me, it's kind of like what the Dalai Lama said. When there's a solution to a problem, then don't worry. And if there's no solution to a problem, then don't worry. So there either is a solution or there's not a solution. And so you really shouldn't be worried about it. But you arm yourself with the information. Like right now, a friend of mine, I post a lot of data. I'm a data junkie. It's where I find, all the information that I can make a decision about and my gut. And I'll post it on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. And I have a friend who's like, how are you not crumpled in a corner right now with all this information? It's like so overwhelming and devastating. But for me, it makes me calm. It doesn't make me anxious. It's the opposite. I think you need to find what makes you less anxious, what calms you. These are uncertain times, but you know what? We've got through them. Yeah, uncertainty, I think you need to, as an entrepreneur, you can't really show it. You can be transparent and authentic with your team and say, I'm a little worried about this, but I have a solution, and this is what we're going to do. And, I'll take full responsibility if it succeeds or fails. That's the greatest entrepreneur, is that CEO who's a really true, leader, who believes in what they're wanting to do, who believes in their team, and to believe that they can succeed together. You can't lie to your teams. I think we see a lot of that going on right now in our, politics. It's uncertain times because no one is really stepping up and telling the truth, which is why I'm following most of the scientific leaders out there, and then I don't feel so uncertain.
Yeah, that's great. So this class of students that we're recording this for, like I said, they are mostly seniors who are about to graduate right now, and a lot of them and a lot of the students overall these days, they have side hustles. They've got things that they are doing that they would like to turn into bigger businesses, hopefully one day, but at the same time, they have maybe full-time jobs, they are students, whatnot. So one of the questions that Noelle from our class asked you, being a student and entering a full-time job after graduation this year, how many hours would you recommend putting aside a week if I wanted to pursue a startup company? I know that's a very specific question, but I was curious if you had like maybe you can't tell the number of hours, but maybe you can tell her something.
Yeah, I do. And for all of you graduating, congratulations again. And bouncing off the uncertainty question, these are really uncertain times for you. But, you know, keep it in perspective. You know, there is light at the end of the tunnel. It might be 6 months, it might be a year from now, but this is a great time to be thinking about side hustles, right? Thinking about something that solves a problem over the next 6 months or a year as we live through this pandemic. You know, who knows what you might be doing? It might be totally different than, you know, what you're majoring in or what you're interested in. So how much time do we put through that? It all depends. You know, if this was normal times and you were working, you got your job after university and you were working 40 hours or 50 or 60 because, you know, you're new and you want to impress somebody, being an entrepreneur is not easy. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of time that needs to be put in. And so I can't balance, you know, all of that with how many hours, but, you know, you'd want to at least do 10% of your week, your work week. So that's 40, you know, hours. You want to give 4 or 5, 6 of that to working on, you know, your entrepreneurial endeavor. That could be just an hour a day, you know, at the end of the evening, whether that's doing research, setting up your company, doing some consumer research, testing your product, you know, but if it were other times, right now you've got the time. I say now is the time to think about, you know, some entrepreneurial endeavors and put the time into it. I don't know how many of you have jobs after the university experience, but from the students I know, not a lot of them are going into full-time jobs, or if they are, they're still going to be working from home. I'm really great at working from home. I schedule my time, and I think it's really important. Schedule your days. If you've got dogs, take them for a walk, schedule it, schedule bathroom breaks, schedule your eating. You'll be amazed at how much work you can get done in 3 to 4 hours at home as compared to 8 hours or 9 hours at an office. No distractions, you know, nobody coming by the desk, not a lot of meaningless meetings. I'm not big on meetings. I like stand-up meetings, no phones. We're in and out in 15, 20 minutes and we get on with our day. But get yourself into that practice because this is going to go on for a while. And if you are starting a job, you're going to want to be fully prepared to work from home and to prove to your bosses that you can do that. And I think we're going to be moving to a lot more remote working anyway. I think most corporate America, who is against remote working, is now seeing that, like, yes, we're responsible adults and we can get our work done. And even if we've got children and families, we can still get it done because, you know, we're human beings and we have amazing brains and and amazing resiliency.
Yes, and some of us even more so than others.
Yes, it's true. For those of you out there too who are feeling, you know, I have a lot of friends who have a lot of anxiety, and mental health, you know, has been such an important thing right now. You know, them not being able to maybe get their prescriptions refilled or getting to their healthcare providers. There's so many, you know, groups out there with free mental health, you know, companies that have EAP programs, call in, you know, because we all need somebody.
On that topic, Maren asked a question, how can non-healthcare workers be activists and advocates for equal access at this time? And how can we help? How can all of us help during this crisis? With your experience, what would you say to that?
When it comes to your question about inequities, I've seen the inequities of healthcare my entire career, and it's still going on. And I don't know if Maija mentioned, but I'm on the board at Chicago Tech Academy. We're the only open enrollment tech high school in the city of Chicago. And when this all went down, our first response was to make sure our students and our families were safe. 80% of our students' families are low income, 20% are homeless. So we wanted to make sure they were food secure, and we wanted to make sure that they were housing secure. Those are two things that all of you can do. Donate your time for food banks, give money if you feel uncomfortable, Support your local restaurants to keep them open so that they can feed the communities. Another thing we did too was the inequity of education. Most of our students don't have internet at home and don't have, computers. Unlike my kids who, went to private schools and had all of those wonderful things. It's amazing to think that we still have so many children in urban and rural areas. Rural areas, no access, and just living in poor communities. And here in the city. So finding organizations that are working on that. I talked to the CIO for the state of Illinois last week, Ron Gruyere, and they're creating hotspots on buses and placing them in communities that don't have internet, which is really fascinating. But they're looking for volunteers. Everybody's looking for volunteers. It's a much bigger question, and I love the question, but the inequities we have are just so huge. And that leads me to why I joined the WEI as well, because with women in, entrepreneurship, a lot of the times we don't have access to education that we still don't have. We don't have access to the tools. We don't have access to the networks that get us to the money, and my parents wouldn't have had that. They were immigrants that, like I said, barely had an education, but they found those people for me and introduced me to those people that could help me in my career, even though they knew they couldn't. And we have generational, poverty. We have generational inequities across education, healthcare, and it's the same when it comes to entrepreneurship. If we could just change one person's life, that changes their whole family's life and generations.
Anything you want to leave the students with? Any last words of wisdom? You've already shared so much, and I thank you for that. But anything that you think we haven't discussed that you think is really important for the graduating seniors to think about, especially from entrepreneurial perspective?
Yeah, from an entrepreneurial perspective, I think we've talked a lot about it today. Resiliency, the power of saying yes, but resiliency is really important. Making mistakes is a great thing. People are always afraid of making a mistake. I'm never afraid of making a mistake. And people might think it's my ego too, and they'll say, well, haven't you made any mistakes? Of course I have. Of course, but I've learned from those and I've grown from those, and those have made me the person I am. Do I have regrets? I probably have a few, but not many, because I've owned those decisions. And I think as an entrepreneur, you learn from those and you just keep moving, because if you don't keep moving, your competition is going to leapfrog you. Another thing is to be super honest and transparent. Not only with yourself, be honest about what you can do and what you can't do. Hire people who are smarter than you. I've done that my whole career. I'm really good at leading people and seeing the big vision and distilling it down to its small parts and knowing how I want it to work, but I can't know everything and I don't know how to do everything. And so I've hired people who've taught me and who've made me look really, really good in my career. And then I help them, get to their next step in their career and hopefully get them into my position. I think as you get older too, so much of what you learn every day is really important to who you are as a human being and who you are as an entrepreneur. So pay attention to those things. Something to think about too is don't discount people who are different from you. Diversity is the best thing. It leads to the best innovation and the best success. Build a company that represents, society as a whole. So many companies, when they ask me to come work for them or to maybe consult with them, I look at their, team or their board and it's like 12 white guys. And I'm like, no, thank you. Because it really starts from the top down. You want to be the company and the board that represents society as a whole. And like I said, diversity really pushes innovation and creates really successful companies. I mean, it's been proven successful boards, 43% make more money having diverse boards. Be true to yourself. I think we've said that already. But yeah, just go with your gut and be happy. Find joy in what you're doing. It's really not always about the money. And sometimes when you're just doing what you really enjoy, the money will come. So hopefully I can leave you with that. And again, congratulations. This has been a really hard fought 4 years for you, and you've all been so successful, and the world is yours. Go grab it, take a hold of it, and say yes to all the opportunities that the universe gives you.
Thank you, Colleen. Thanks for taking time to do this, and thank you for all those pieces of advice, all your words and wisdom. I know it will be well received. Yeah.
Anytime, and I always, I mentor for a lot of different groups. But if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, if you have any questions, feel free. I'm always open to that, because me paying it forward hopefully means you pay it forward too.
Thank you.